This is a special edition of The Heart of the Story with Gary Metivier, inspiring stories of everyday people doing cool stuff. People living their dreams, following their passions, like Jamie McQuaid, who as a little girl was inspired to help others after watching the animated movie Robin Hood.
I really value from that movie the opportunity to be a voice for someone who is having a hard time speaking for themselves.
Now as a mental health counselor, she is the voice for so many, especially now as anxiety levels rise in the wake of a world crisis. Her voice is one of hope.
Stay connected. So with any age, Facebook often will have Facebook groups, and those Facebook groups right now are really active. So for example, let's say you're really interested in crafting and you're on a Facebook group about crafting. Chances are there's going to be some live events that they're going to do that you can join in and kind of be a part of. And so you're still really interacting in a meaningful way with people who have similar interests.
Using Facebook, FaceTime, apps, and hobbies to stay connected during this trying time, she takes us to the heart of the story. Special Episode 2, Isolated. You are not alone. So hey, how are you feeling right now? A few days into this whole self-quarantine, isolation, social distancing thing. Of course, all of us react in different ways. Let's take the toilet paper hoarding scenario, repeatedly playing out on TV and social media. Experts tell us that so-called social contagion is a necessary part of survival. And feeling threatened triggers our primitive instincts. Seeing people stock up on toilet paper changes the perception of how necessary it really is. When you mimic that behavior, you experience a psychological reward that you've done something right. We see everyone going for something. We see empty store shelves. It is human nature to try to go and get some of it for our families. It is something actionable. Makes us feel a little bit more in control, at least in the short term. By the way, the reality here is industry pros tell us there's plenty of toilet paper and a lot of food out there. So now as we settle in, some are feeling chill, riding out the storm, doing some work, reading some books, maybe binge watching Netflix or Amazon, helping others. And so many more are experiencing greater anxiety, fear, even depression. So we want to talk about some of the realities out there and many little things that we can all do to help all of us in this time of need. Tips that you can share with your family and friends. It's part of Jamie McQuaid's everyday life as a mental health counselor at Vera French Mental Health Center. It's a place full of experts doing the important work quietly behind the scenes. We have the website contact information and all of that in our show notes. So let's get started. I am with Jamie McQuaid, a mental health counselor here at Vera French. And how long have you been here?
I started at Vera French in April after moving back here from Florida.
And what is your job? What is your primary responsibility?
So I work with clients who oftentimes have anxiety or depression, but oftentimes have other concerns as well.
Okay. Now you have never seen, nor have any of us ever seen, a crisis like we're facing now as a country.
No, this is unprecedented.
And it is putting a lot of people in positions that they've never expected to be in before. Let's start with isolation, okay? That has a tendency to really change some things within us pretty quickly. What are some of the things that you think people are dealing with now in terms of isolation?
Yeah, so a lot of people, because of fear of getting sick and the different high-risk population, if there's something wrong with them that causes them to be at fear of contracting the virus, oftentimes can feel as if they're isolated and lonely and have to stay home and not really interact with people. Luckily, we live in an age where there are many ways to connect. And you don't have to do it face-to-face or right next to each other. And so there are a lot of options for people who are in isolation. An old friend of mine, Randall Johnson, said, when you mix fear with isolation, bad things happen. But in this scary time, it's important to know we're not alone. And so it's really important to identify some ways that you can connect with people. Let's say most people are on Facebook. And so really avoiding those really negative posts or fearful posts, but attempting to find people that you actually know and are close to and connecting with them would be really healthy right now.
And that is so hard, to be honest with you, because you look at your Facebook posts, you watch the news because you're stuck in your home, and you see so much bad stuff, honestly, all around you. And that then builds on itself, right? I think people start feeling like they're sort of stuck inside. You know, you can't open a window, you can't walk outside, you can take your dog out back.
Yeah, and it's great to get outside when the weather is decent. Not only can exercise, but also the sunlight can be helpful with mood and feeling less isolated and less alone. Going for a walk with somebody is okay even. You don't have to do it alone, just keep your distance. There's not, it's not complete isolation. It doesn't have to be anyway. And it's really recommended just for health in general, our physical and mental health, to be able to find some way of connecting.
Can we jump into the science a little bit of this in terms of psychology and sociology and all this? With a person that's facing isolation, maybe perhaps for the first time, is something chemically happening within our brains, within our nervous system, that is actually really changing?
Yeah, so we are social beings. We have needs that are met by having social interaction. And so oftentimes being isolated can really impact not only our mood, but our ability to do everyday normal stuff. And once we see that impact on our everyday normal stuff, that's usually a sign that things have gotten a little more out of hand and we might need some more help.
And across the spectrum, I mean, we have different age groups that are affected in different ways, from the senior that everybody's staying away from to protect them, that really needs that. They need that human interaction, right? This is a time when they maybe need it more than ever because of a fear of the unknown, because all they see on their TV again or hear on the radio is cases spreading, people dying.
Yes.
In particular, in their age group. I mean, that makes it specific. I know it's crossing all age ranges now, but we know the most vulnerable are the oldest.
Yes, and in this time, it's really important as family members. Let's say you're a family member of someone who is older and who is isolated. Call them. Do everything you can to be in touch with them as often as you can. Just to help them to get out of their own head, to help them not feel completely alone in this. Same for even just someone who has asthma or someone who might have a condition that causes them to really need to be isolated or quarantined to avoid being ill. Reach out to them. It's going to help you, and it's going to help them too.
And I think, we have some cool tools now too, right? We have FaceTime, which I use with my mom. And you can hear a voice, that's one thing, but when you can see their face and they can see you, it is the next best thing to being there, if you will.
It is, yeah.
So what do you recommend for then, now we go down the generations, if you will, okay? So you have your older folks that are very concerned about their health and about being stuck inside and the fears of what they're seeing. You have middle-aged people, perhaps, that have children at home or college-age kids at home. What are your recommendations for them?
So for middle-aged, I would say the best thing that you can do is to be really careful not to spend too much time either watching the news or too much time watching things that potentially increase fear or increase that anxiety or isolation feeling. And to really be able to connect either through FaceTime, there's even video chat through Facebook and different other apps.
Free apps like Wobot, Happify, Not Okay, What's Up, Sam, Breeze, even social media posts where you're sharing your favorite local restaurants that you can support by ordering takeout and at the same time enjoying some of those foods you may be missing right about now. And apps that can help you with deep breathing and relaxing, like breathe to relax, my calm beat, calm, and mindfulness.
So if you know people that you can connect with through a video chat, it just kind of helps you to not feel isolated. But also, if you're really overwhelmed with the kiddos at home, gives you some adult time. And so that can be really helpful too.
That's important. Our kids, now more than ever, they have things to do at home, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's binging TV or playing or gaming, and they can actually game with their friends, obviously, too, through the internet and through headsets or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you recommend trying to stay as involved in all those activities as you can.
Yes, stay connected. So with any age, Facebook often will have Facebook groups, and those Facebook groups right now are really active. So for example, let's say you're really interested in crafting and you're on a Facebook group about crafting. Chances are there's going to be some live events that they're going to do that you can join in and kind of be a part of, and so you're still really interacting in a meaningful way with people who have similar interests.
That's a great idea. You can also do that with there's woodworking clubs, right, that have stuff, and then there's Pinterest, right, where people get together and share ideas on how to make things or their favorite video clip. All these things are more important than ever, perhaps.
And faith communities, especially if you're a part of a faith community. Groups are doing a lot to make sure that their community is has connection and not just kind of saying, okay, we're just taking a break for now, that they're really trying to connect with everybody who is part of their group.
And all these lead to, as we finish up on the isolation part of this leads to a sense of community. There is more ways to stay connected than ever before, and people are discovering this in every day. I mean, I saw last night how to support local restaurants. Someone put together on a Facebook group all the restaurants that do takeout, so that people can support the small restaurants, but also still be part of this community. And they're sharing these details and all this stuff. So we can stay connected even in isolation. All right, so now I want to turn to anxiety and depression, okay? Because I will tell you, as a man who covered 30 years of news, sometimes covering a lot of a disaster, Oklahoma City bombing was one of my first big ones, 9/11. Those things, we take in a lot of information continuously, and it's hard to stop taking it in. We want to know what's going on. That's sort of another way of how we're sort of connected. Where do we go with anxiety, and when does anxiety cross a line over to something deeper?
So fear is normal, right? If I have a lion chasing me, it's normal to be fearful because there's a danger. And in the same way, and it's helpful because my fear will push me into taking action to keep me safe. In the same way, we want to be fearful of COVID-19 in the sense that we take whatever actions that we feel are necessary to keep us safe. On the other hand, where fear turns into anxiety is where it really stops us from being able to function. It takes over our life. We will feel physical, intense, like maybe your heart rate might increase. You might find that every time you watch the news, you start to sweat or get really tense. Those types of things are much more like anxiety because it's just keeping you stuck as opposed to helping you do what you need to do to be safe. And so there's help. You don't have to face that alone. Some things you can do, though, is to really limit the amount of time you spend watching the news and pick very reputable sources. Don't spend too much time reading people's opinions. Only go to the authorities for the short period of time every day that you need to make sure that you're still kind of living within the current confines of what's going to be most healthy and appropriate. And avoid just listening to people's opinions about what is going on. And so that can help to avoid that anxiety space.
And is it true that working out and making sure that you're eating right, in particular when you're surrounded by your stockpile of all your favorite foods. Those can help with anxiety and with fear as well, the working out in particular.
Yes, so in our brain, there are certain chemicals that release a sense of calm and relaxation, and others that help us to feel good or happy. And when we work out, those are released. Whether it be, typically doctors would recommend you do at least 30 to 45 minutes of cardio exercise every week, and that can have the same impact on your brain as an antidepressant drug. And it's so interesting to me how so many different things can impact our brain and how it functions and how it works. So our eating habits, our exercise habits, our thoughts, what we're watching on TV, what we're reading on Facebook, all of that can impact. So it can be helpful to really manage, ensuring that you're doing some things that are going to be helpful during this time, because there's so much negativity around.
And when you find yourself overwhelmed by the negativity and things like what we're talking about are not enough, when we take a leap from sadness to something that may be depression, how do we know what that is and what do we do about it?
Yeah, so the biggest signs for depression, what I would say, would be not being able to sleep, feeling hopeless, like things won't get better, thinking about death, changes in appetite. It can be a high appetite or a low appetite, many different things, but more those significant changes that once again impact your day-to-day life and make it difficult to manage. You get low motivation, less energy, those types of things.
It's harder to tell nowadays, I would assume, because people feel lower energy because they're not getting up and getting ready to go to work. They're doing the same thing, and they are just kind of hanging around, so they don't feel that energized, right? They're not thinking long term. We're thinking, hey, when can I get out of my house? When can I go back to normal, if you will? So it's harder to read those signs, I'm sure.
It is, absolutely. And that's where having people around and staying connected will help, because if you find isolation can be, we talked about that at first, but isolation can be one symptom of depression as well. And so if you find that even though maybe you want to talk to people, you're avoiding that, that's another good sign.
And there are places to call. You're here, and there are hotlines for people that are really having deep issues with that. Are you seeing or hearing of more and more calls at this point? I know it's very early. I hate to say that because it seems like we've been going through this for a while, but it's relatively early in this crisis. Are you hearing more from people with concerns like this?
I would say that everyone we hear from is concerned in some way. Luckily, we've been able to work with people by offering phone sessions in lieu of face-to-face sessions in order to help them still get the help they need in this time without feeling like they're putting themselves at risk. So even if it's the first session, they can do by phone, or if they've been with us for many years, they can do something by phone. And I think that that's hopefully helping to minimize people's anxiety as well, because people still need to get the help. Even if they're struggling with anxiety or depression, it's really important to seek help, because there can be some really difficult things that can come along with that as it gets bigger and bigger. And
even just to know that there's someone a phone call away, that's a sense of relief and of comfort to them, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I have to ask you this, because in all my interviews, I'm always trying to find out what drives people in their lives and their careers. What is it about working with mental health that drives you? What got you into this business?
So I started to think about being a counselor at a very young age. I think I was probably 9 or 10. And when I think about what was driving me back then, I have a favorite movie to this day. It is Robin Hood, the cartoon, the Disney's Robin Hood movie. And for me, I prefer one-on-one interactions, but I really value from that movie the opportunity to be a voice for someone who is having a hard time speaking for themselves. And so for me, that's what drives me, and my faith. My faith has helped me to to shoulder the burden without taking it on. I can kind of help, but then I also have something that helps me to give that burden away.
Boy, that's so important, isn't it? No matter what your faith may be, you have to have a way. You can't take on all the burden for you. I mean, I can say that as a news guy, right? And as the voice of calm and reason to people. And sometimes on the inside, you're like, yeah, I'm trying to be calm for you, but on the inside, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit too. You must have a little of that even as you watch this crisis unfold.
Absolutely. There have been moments of worry and moments of concern. I think sometimes, me personally, and I'm not like everybody here, I think everybody's different, but I personally tend to kind of hold really strong during, and then I kind of let myself feel everything after. So I have a feeling I'll have a couple days where I'll really feel it.
Well, I want to share this because we are all people and we all go through that. During the Oklahoma City bombing, I was anchoring the newscast, and I was news director in that area of Oklahoma City. It's where my family was, and most of my staff, most of their families were from there. And we did hours and hours of programming. I mean, I interviewed people on the telephone, a doctor that described having to use a pocket knife to cut a woman's arm off to pull her out of the wreckage. And he was live on the phone describing this in detail to me. And we were talking about blood drives and how we can help and pulling everybody together. Then at the end of that show, when we realized the show was over, the studio lights went off, everyone came together in the middle of the studio and started crying and hugging because they hadn't had a chance, none of us had had a chance to process yet what we were feeling or thinking. We were just doing our jobs. And there are a lot of people out there that must feel that way right now.
Absolutely. Especially hospital workers, people delivering mail. There's so many different people that our life is going on, quote unquote, as normal for them. Their work is continuing, and I'm sure that there is some worry and some concern, and that when this is all over, there might be a breaking point.
Yeah. And then when that's over, the sun will come out tomorrow.
Exactly.
I mean, it may rain here, but still, you know, overall, things will get better. And people need to know that. They need to know that, yes, our darkest times, and sometimes as we hear, darkest times bring out the best in all of us, right? So the more people potentially can share in some of these apps you're talking about, some of these gaming, some of the, YouTube videos, or join these communities that they have never found before, maybe they will come out of this isolation even stronger than before.
Exactly.
How does it make you feel at the end of the day when you know that you got through and really helped someone?
Well, it's the reason why we do what we do, and it's really important to see the fruits of our labor. I think in whatever we do, even in many different jobs, but it's important to be able to see there's been progress. I can see that we've been helpful in some way.
Well, your work is so important. So on behalf of so many people, thank you for what you do every day. We know it's not easy. It's so hard to hear everybody else's problems and concerns, and not every case turns out great for you. We know that. I mean, many do not. But you come back day after day because you know there's someone out there that you can help, some life that you can touch in some way that will make a tremendous difference, at least to them, right? They're not alone. They have people like you out here.
Yeah.
And thank you for being there.
Thanks for listening.
Remember, most importantly here, you are not alone. Call a friend. Call the experts at places like Vera French or mental health organizations where you live. There are a lot of people who really care about you out there. And if you enjoyed this, check out our previous episode on caring for seniors, including why it's so important right now to call Mom if you're lucky enough to still have her. And listen to some of the stories to escape into other worlds, some inspiring people just waiting for you to meet. And interact with us on Facebook. Let us know some of your concerns. We'll ask the experts, and we'll get some of those answers right back to you. Find more online at metivier.com, and watch our Heart of the Story YouTube channel, too. Subscribe, share, help us grow. There is no cost, of course. This is the Heart of the Story with Gary Metivier.